Onward takes place in a world where fantasy is history and technology has led to the decline of magic. Well, that is until two elf brothers, Ian and Barley, discover that their late father has left behind a spell that will allow them to see him one last time. Now the two must embark on a quest to finish the spell in the hopes that Ian can finally meet his father. Alright, so when the teaser dropped for this movie, I was pretty excited. For the first 15 seconds, that is. We're given sweeping shots of a fantasy realm full of legendary creatures. And then one silly little airplane dashed my enthusiasm. The remaining minute and a half showed off a suburban fantasy world where it's basically a mirror of our reality, just with mythical beasts as its occupants. Thank God that Frozen 2 trailer came along shortly after, because it perfectly filled the hole left by Onward. But, as with every film, you have to leave your expectations at the door and experience the movie for what it is. And what Onward is a fine family flick. Look, it's no secret that Pixar has been in somewhat of a slump since Toy Story 3 back in 2010, with only a couple of really strong entries between then and now. Onward, unfortunately, lands as one of their lesser efforts. My sister pointed something out to me, and I can't stop thinking about it. She said that Onward looks like a DreamWorks movie. Now, this isn't a slight on DreamWorks Animation, because they made plenty of great films. But I do agree with my sister, this doesn't feel like a Pixar movie. It lacks that sense of passion and ingenuity that is so palpable in the best Pixar films. It feels like someone came up with the idea for an urban fantasy setting and forgot to include a compelling narrative to take us through this journey. Okay, that might seem a bit harsh for a film where the main character wants to meet his father who passed away before he was born. But I just didn't care for this all that much, which is a huge problem considering it's the main plot. I guess my issue is that Ian idolizes his father Wilden and is dead set on being like him, but we know next to nothing about this man. We can assume that what Ian knows about Wilden came through stories, but we as an audience don't hear many of them, so I never really bought into Ian's obsession with following his father's footsteps. The problem is further compounded by his dad's representation in the film as a pair of legs. You see, when he cast the spell, Ian wasn't able to complete it, and so only brought back half of his father. The crux of the film is Ian and Barley chasing a MacGuffin that will allow them to bring back Wilden in his entirety, which means that along their journey, the brothers are essentially traveling with a sentient pair of pants. Now I get that it's a metaphor for Ian not having a fully formed idea of Wilden, and while there are some really good jokes involving the blindly wandering limbs, there isn't much personality poured into them, so the focal point of Ian wanting to meet his father still falls a little flat for me. What I'm trying to say is that the emotional punch that the film is going for doesn't connect. But what works far better is the sibling relationship between Ian and Barley. The former is a meek, timid figure, while the latter is fearless and always looking for adventure. Ian has a talent for magic, and Barley has the knowledge to teach him thanks to his obsession with role-playing games, so their dynamic is sufficient for this quest. I especially like the moments when the two are at odds, usually because of Ian's opinion of his older sibling. Even though these scenes were frequently brushed over and quickly resolved, which infuriated me, I enjoyed the conflict because it felt very real. Sadly though, most of the characters turned out to be either bland or vexing in my eyes. Ian is a caricature of a caricature, leaving no impression whatsoever. He's voiced by Tom Holland, who's basically playing himself here. Nothing about this character really clicks, which is a major problem because he's the protagonist of the story. The boy's mother Laurel, played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus, is pretty insignificant by the end, and Mel Rodriguez's centaur police officer barely qualifies as likable. But the restaurant-owning manticore really drove me up a wall. I found her personality to be extensively annoying, and I don't blame Octavia Spencer, who provides her with the appropriate energy. I just think it's a badly written and poorly executed character. Oddly enough, the one person I was actually fond of was Barley, which is strange because I usually don't take to these types of characters. He's the bombastic screw-up that lives in his own little world, and yet I found him to be quite endearing. Barley always tries to do the right thing, but it usually doesn't turn out well for him, and Chris Pratt was prime casting for this Falstaffian personality. And the character gets even better once we learn about why he is the way he is, which brings me to the theme of the picture, and this is where it really shines. Onward is ultimately about regret. I mean, it's got a few other things on its mind, but I think this is the most important theme, and the way the movie depicts this concept is, honestly, pretty great. The whole idea of regret is not being able to change a decision you've made in the past that you are now unhappy with. But sometimes, we're given that rare chance to perhaps fix things, and that's what Onward excels in showing. What if you had the opportunity to change something you thought was impossible to do? This is where the true drive of the film lies. Furthermore, it leads into a really well-handled conclusion. I won't give it away, but this movie goes for an emotional beat that I never would have expected from a Disney Pixar project. I kept waiting for them to renege on this development, but it didn't happen, and I'm genuinely amazed at how the film wrapped up. It's a touching end that will probably blindside you. I'm afraid my review might come across more negative than I want it to with all the problems I mentioned. So I want you to know, I'm not listing all the reasons this film is bad, but rather I'm explaining why it's not great. You can separate the picture into two halves, with the first portion being quite fluffy as the focus is mainly on Ian and Barley obtaining a map, and the second being a significant improvement, with the quest officially beginning. The animation is the quality you expect from a Pixar feature, and the implementation of the themes is a splendid surprise. Despite its faults, this is a perfectly enjoyable little film, but a far cry from the studio's top productions. I give Onward a B-. Thank you so much for watching this review. If you liked the video, then please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to my channel for similar content because that would really help me out. You can also follow me on Twitter at MiamiMovieMan, and if you want to keep up with what I'm watching, then go ahead and look me up on Letterboxd as well. I'm the Miami Movie Man, and I'll see you in the next video.